Let's call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the city of Mitchellville for Tuesday, March 8th. Let's have a roll call.
Chambers?
Here.
Kendrick?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Leaslander?
Here.
Hoover?
Here.
Brazelton? Here. Thomas?
Here. Okay. We have the agenda before you. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, are saying aye?
Aye.
All right, item 3, review of the minutes from December 14th and January 11th.
Move to approve.
And second. To approve in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 4, discuss the January 11th presentation by Iowa State University on the planning and zoning practical knowledge and annexation in Iowa. Tammy, is this on the agenda for anything in particular?
No, I just didn't know, this is your first time meeting since the presentation. I didn't know if there were any thoughts or any concerns. Follow through, I know we're supposed to have scheduled the guy from the Iowa Development Board that approves annexations. He has not been available lately. He has COVID, but he is getting better. He offered to do a Zoom, but I told him we can wait until we can. I prefer an in-person, kind of it's easier to discuss things in a bigger group. So he will be at a future PNZ meeting. Yeah, I didn't know if any of you wanted to share your thoughts or your feelings or anything coming away from that. If you don't, you guys can move on, but I just wanted it on there.
It is very informative, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
I thought it was a good meeting.
They did a very good job, I thought. The presentation, everything was awesome.
Good to have refreshers like this for the board,
Yeah.
you know, periodically.
And, and speaking of refreshers, I thought one of my takeaways from it is, it almost seems like, and I don't know what your thoughts are, that we better start thinking about the master plan again.
Oh, 5 years later.
Yeah,
Yep.
and what would that entail? And, from that standpoint, who did we have last time to help us along with that?
ISU.
It was ISU?
Yeah.
It was a class project. They got to choose between like 4 cities and they chose us. They liked the fact that we had a prison and we were right on the interstate.
You did a pretty good job.
So they put it together. I mean, we paid for the students and the teachers to come and do it, but I don't know how much it is if it's not the
When's that
part of
due
the class
again?
project. It is, I mean, I think they tell you to review it every 5 years. Not necessarily completely redoing it. It's considered a 40-year plan, I believe. But you wanna redo it, look at it. So it is something we could have on a future agenda to bring it and tear it apart and see if there's sections that you want. You could just redo sections, or you could redo the whole thing.
Well, it's definitely worth considering, how to approach doing it. And I mean, I don't know what your feelings are about having Iowa State show up again to kind of facilitate it.
I can sure put some feelers out there and see what our options are, if there's anything open, or if there's anything.
LeBrant, do you have something to add, or?
Just as a starter, I'd like all of you to think about taking a highlighter to a map and putting a boundary out there. We've got a couple people quietly talking about bringing some ground back into the city voluntarily. And I'm like, well, yeah. It's not on our map now, so.
It's not on our map now.
It's not on our map now. So you might wanna, how far west can we go and where do we go north? I think are the 2 boundaries that I looked at the quickest. Also,
I think southbound is
South.
important.
southbound is, yeah.
Going for it now.
And not only where and how you think, but why. Relationships to Mitchellville is what seems to be coming up in the discussions I'm having. So.
Well, as usual, I mean, the more information I think we can share or get out to the public to be part of the process, is always helpful. And again, I don't know if ISU has some advice or steps for that as well. But,
I think if we did it, we'd be surprised at the number of people that would at least come and consider.
Mhm.
Could we get that on the agenda for our next meeting?
Could we? That would be good. Discuss.
Even if it's just taking the map and putting the mark on it.
Yeah.
let's just do a work session on boundary review.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with you. It's something that,
Should have been done a long time ago.
well, not only that, but we can't let it go any farther. We've gotta take a proactive, action on it, so.
I think my takeaway was that, obviously we learned what's all involved in an involuntary annexation. And moving forward, we would want voluntary annexation,
Absolutely.
80-20, and of course that's driven by the folks like LeBrent out there that drive the development. And so I think it's important that we, it's a fine line for our council to have incentives so that in the infrastructure, everything ready, so that developers want to come here. But doing that in a responsible way, that you're not giving away the farm. So it's that balance.
And making sure that everything's clearly spelled out, that's the one thing that I got from that meeting too, was making sure there was no gray area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you read,
Oh, you might wanna review, there's a couple sections in our, planning and zoning code, so we might wanna review a couple sections. For instance, it came up with Kimberly Development, there really isn't a stipulation in there that they're required to have parkland or green space. Our engineer fought for it, so they're doing it, but that's something that we're gonna wanna look at. If they're bringing in, 100 acres, how much part of that are we gonna require that they, are they actually, there's all kinds of discussions to go along with that, but there's some things we might want to update our zoning code.
I thought there was, I know there's something, I think, for the commercial side of it, they have to have so much green space. I thought that was the same for.
And Tony with BK didn't find it spelled out in our code, he said it's just common practice, so that's how we pushed it.
Sure.
as you read and see news articles about different communities who are exploding, one of the concerns is all the infrastructure and how far some of them are behind and how costly that is. So I agree with what you said, Carl. We need to make sure that there's no gray areas.
Right.
That,
What we promised, we follow through on.
and, yeah.
And with respect to green space, I mean, that type of a ratio of green space to development, again, is that could also be a standard of a goal of the master plan. I mean, reflected in your new development.
Our engineers could recommend that.
Yeah. Well, sure, I think it'd be great, especially if we can get ISU pulled back in, to start,
I'll start researching and see what I can come up with.
all right. Let's see. Item 5, review and consider for approval a recommendation to council on the plat of survey on the, is it Mock property? Now. On 8925 Northeast 62nd Avenue. It's within 2 miles of the city limits of Mitchellville.
Didn't we talk about this in December?
I had to double check it, there's 2 separate properties. If you look at like the very last page for that section, this one, the orange one is the one you talked about before.
Oh, okay.
Cause that's what I looked at it like, okay, I know we talked about this one. And you guys approved that in December of 21, so you did just talk about it. This one would be the yellow one.
What are they trying to do here, Amy? Are they trying to subdivide, or are they trying to make it all one, or are they trying to?
Yeah, it looks like they're this one, that's where the house is, so they're subdividing it, so there's 2 lots on either side. It's saying that there will be a, minimum of 70 acres of residential parcel to be maintained as permanent open space is what they're saying.
I know that's a pretty nice house out there, as old as it is. It's all stucco and there ain't a crack in it.
And it's empty.
And it's empty. Yeah,
Yep. I drove by it yesterday and
it's
it's.
been empty for a while. Never been inside, but I can imagine. Probably.
It looks like they're gonna allow 2 lots in that residual parcel. If you read through what county's requiring them on the Bayside area, a maximum lots permitted would be 2 lots. So there'd be 2 developed lots that could be developed.
Now, what if that area is an area that may get annexed in the future?
I mean, it's on, yeah, it's on the 80, so.
I mean, isn't that's real close to Ed Craig, isn't it?
It is, yeah, a little bit north of it. If you look at,
It's on the same road.
Ed Craig's is here, and
Right.
that's one's, yeah, so it's, yeah, not too far off.
I mean, that's the main question I really have. That ends up getting annexed in.
It'll be already, everything will be already approved, so
Yeah.
it shouldn't matter to them or us.
Well, they'll probably be on the septic and everything, right?
Yeah, they're not even sitting there, yeah, they're not anywhere close to it.
Remember that spot zone?
Well, any thoughts or motion on this?
I'll motion that we approve this, thing.
Second.
Motion by Ed, second by Carla. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item 6. Review and consider for approval a recommendation to council on the rural plat of survey for the Landis Cooperative. Now, where is this?
This is north of 80.
Just that house right on the other side of the
Got it.
interstate,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
To the north end of that piece of property. If you go to the Bondurant Road and you go toward Bondurant, there's a great big sign there that says, "Future Home of Landis Corp."
Oh, yeah.
Why did they include Craig's house there? Just to say.
I think
this
they're
is a-
separating Craig's house off.
But they bought the whole,
Oh,
I don't know, I'm asking.
30 acres, just the 30 acres. Did you hear they bought the whole?
The whole thing? Just where they're gonna put
Just the square.
where they're gonna put the
30 acres.
co-op. Then why is that highlighted?
And I don't have, the assessor doesn't have it split apart yet for me to get that data, so that's why it's all one.
Okay.
I assume they're splitting it off, splitting the house off, so then they'll, if they're only buying the one part.
Well, it talks about residual open spaces
Yeah.
plus the house, so.
But I think in the county, in order to build, whatever it's gonna be there, they're gonna have to have it on a separate lot than what the house is, so I think that's what, we need to split off the house.
Oh, okay.
Even though they're still gonna own it all, I don't think they can have a, industrial thing or anything on an acreage right now.
And what is going to be there?
I'm not certain, they haven't given us any details, or me any details. The
What's
city
gonna be where?
details on the land is,
They're putting up a, anhydrous ammonia transfer station. They are putting up, initially, I understand, if you go by the downtown one in Bondurant, they've got a large metal building behind their silos, putting a building like that, for soybeans, that they can separate and treat soybeans, a couple different phases, and then a drop area for corn. And the idea behind it is that virtually everything that goes in there will only be there about a week to 10 days before it's shipped back out. So that's why they didn't buy something that was on a rail, which,
Is that like they did in Bondurant there, east
They
of
kinda
Bondurant,
show
that
you-
big pile of corn,
Yeah.
they dumped it in there and then they hauled
I
it.
think that's where they learned it, and I don't know if you've kept up with it all, but Heartland and Landis traded some properties recently. So Landis has a new CEO, been there about 9 months, and he's building a new headquarters downtown Des Moines, and
Yep.
it's a whole new world, yep.
So the liquid area then, I'm assuming, is the anhydrous?
Yeah.
All right, and then the proposed dry fertilizer, dry fertilizer area, is that gonna be enclosed? Like, it just seems close to the road to me.
It looks like it's gonna be enclosed.
Supposed to be.
I mean, if it's fertilizer, I think they'd want it enclosed.
They're not really putting up like an office building or anything like that. A small service center in it, but I think, the way I
Just have
understood
like
it,
a little office
there
building
is
on
like
there,
a
whatever.
there would be 3 buildings on the top.
And probably scales, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's pretty close to Mitchellville.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
You
Right on the
could
other side of the interstate.
about as close
Wonder
as
if
you
they'd
get
be
without
interested.
being in Mitchellville, yeah.
Go ahead and say that.
Fairly
Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Voluntary
Like-
annexation.
It'd be a good annexable property.
It is an annexable.
The only
My
bad thing
question,
is
has
it's
there
on
been any
the
discussion
north side of the
about that?
interstate,
Yeah,
and we gotta get utilities over there, we gotta
Yeah.
get water and sewer over there.
But it's all to the interstate. We've got it there. Just gotta go under the interstate.
yep.
That's the cost, but it's worth it.
Well, it is worth it because it's the
You gotta-
most developed sand mine.
That's right.
It's
Should've done it 30 years ago.
Golden rule number 2. I think it's pretty close to Mitchellville. I mean, I think maybe we gotta think about this a little stronger.
Well, I think if something like that starts going up right outside of town, we might hear something from the people in town.
You really think so?
I think so. I think there might be a little bit of negative.
The farming community is gonna balk on it?
I'm not saying the farming community will, I'm just saying that
Who lives in Mitchellville? That's
not everybody's a farmer in Mitchellville, and I know that there's a lot of people that are objecting to things like this.
I ask you to consider the proximity to what's being developed down the road in Mitchellville.
Correct.
And, that's my biggest concern, you know.
I mean, that's real close to the land that we have set up for future development already.
Yeah, it's across the interstate.
Just across the interstate.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one reason why they picked this spot.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to go on the other side of the interstate, because it's annexed.
Well, I'm thinking probably that it wouldn't go up there.
No. No.
So what happens if we don't do anything?
Don't recommend it, it still has to go before council. So it would go to council as not recommended by P and Z, or you either took action and say no, or you didn't take any action, one or the other, and it would go to council, and then council would recommend or no. Even if council says no, it's not in city limits, so the county doesn't have to consider our wishes. We would hope that they would, but they wouldn't have to.
You're right.
So I don't know what it would have, what it'll come out to if they say, oh, Mitchell don't want it right there, so.
Understandable. I just, from our standpoint, as to what our goals are, and as we look at the master plan and the thoughts of moving northward, it's, I guess maybe at this point, we could either choose to let it die for a lack of a motion, or recommend again, that our thoughts be known, being against it.
Register or no, yes. Then.
Yes.
How about requesting somebody from Landis and somebody from the county come?
I would say this warrants that type of a visit. I would say I would like.
Did you even have anybody
Okay.
from Landis come in?
I'm gonna take a stand.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend this to the council to move forward.
All right.
You're making a motion?
Yes.
I don't know, in my mind, what the problem is. It's on the north side of the interstate, we're not gonna get much going on the north side of the interstate that I can see or tell. I don't know anything you do, you
Is it on our comp plan?
put up new plants or drill under the interstate, and it's a lot not cheap. So it's hard for me to see.
Sounds like it'll be harder stuff.
Yeah, I didn't think the students went north of the
No, they didn't
interstate.
go north of the interstate. Yeah, I'll second Ted's motion. I don't see any reason why it's an agricultural development. I think it would drive future development or industrial type development in that area, which is what our goal is. We don't go across the interstate with our comp plan, but we know what we're trying to do on the
Just
Craig
south
land
of that on the
Craig
interstate.
land and the webland and that, so.
Just south of the interstate is kind of industrial area, light industrial.
Light industrial, that's what I was looking for.
So to me, that all ties in, so.
So the nature of this operation, you don't have a problem with it, with this proximity to the.
We are a farming community.
We have, and Hydra's right in the center of our town.
Right.
Yeah.
We have all of this stuff right in the middle.
We got the grain elevator that's been there for years.
Understandable.
And,
I've seen that, I'm sure you've all seen that operation in Bonneville when they did it over there all the time, every year after year after year, the corn comes and the corn goes.
yeah, oh yeah.
And it's
There's
right
no
down.
problems,
Yeah.
there's never
There-
any problems
there
there.
isn't.
They unload it and they dry it and they load it up and get it out.
There's no pollution, there's
I
no.
don't see, so I don't,
mess.
the only only hazard you might have would be the anhydrous possibly, but
Well, there's a bunch of anhydrous tanks just sitting right outside of town.
right outside of town.
Can anyone elaborate on this, on the anhydrous ammonia? And is it, I mean, is it just basically a collection point like we see outside of town, or is it something more elaborate than
I
that?
can't elaborate, I don't know.
It's called a transfer station, so I think it's real similar to what's downtown
The big
by the
tank.
tract.
Just the bigger
That
tank.
sits down on the west side of the co-op's property. I think that's what we're looking at.
It's not much different than having LP tanks sitting there or anything
I
else.
think that's all they did over there too, they just run tanks and went out there and fill them up, like we do here.
So you got a motion?
We have
and
a
second.
motion, yeah, we do, we have a motion by Ted, and then a second by Tony, let's have a roll call on this one.
Olson,
Yes.
Weislander,
Yes,
Hoover,
Yes,
Chambers,
Yes.
Kendrick,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
Rossington.
Yes.
all right.
Good discussion,
Good idea.
yes.
Okay, okay, here we are, item 7. Review zoning code chapter 168.04 and 169.01 with regard to height of accessory buildings in an ag zone. And Tammy, is there something special that brought this up? that
Yes,
brought
this
on?
is, our permitting, B&K noticed this a while back, that in one area of the code, it says that no accessory building can be higher than 14 feet. But on the bottom of, the bulk rates for
Says agriculture.
ag, accessory buildings for ag uses, no limit. And it was a while back that it was brought up, and it was brought up just recently. The house that is at the end of, it's on 28, it's the last house that's in city limits, going outside of town towards Colfax.
Mhm.
They have like, I don't know, 5 acres there. We're gonna have horses, and they're putting up a horse barn. And the horse barn is obviously gonna be more than, yeah. And so there's really, can we enforce the 14 feet? Should we enforce the 14 feet? You know, the limits to accessory building, it says 1 story, but then it says accessory buildings for ag use is no limit.
So it's on the extension of 6th Street,
Yes.
the next mile, and it's about a half a mile back in.
Yes, there's like
Okay.
5 houses there in the row. The last house has,
is the one that sits back in there.
yeah,
You can see
and
it
it
from
has,
there.
and they back up into the creek, and it's got, yeah.
Overlooks
It's got
Carson.
enough room for horses. It's zoned ag, it's the last property there that is zoned ag. So we can't not allow horses there because it's following the zoning code. And so they were gonna be building a horse barn, and we had to approve it. So just going forward, I didn't know if this is something we want to change. We do have a lot of ag land in city limits, you know, anything south of us going all the way to Highway 6 is all zoned ag land. We could have someone, you know, section off a place, build a house, and wanna put up a big, huge barn. So I didn't know if this is something you guys wanted to visit and discuss. I'm not expecting you to take any action tonight, but I just wanted, this was one of the,
What do other towns' ordinances say?
most of them don't have as much ag land in them as we do.
Right, they all got
And,
rid of
and
it.
they do enforce, you know, no pole building, no pole barns in city limits regardless of the zone. There are some that says, you know, that it's a maximum building size, maximum height, regardless of what zone it's in.
My understanding is for the height thing is sightlines, and out there would be 0 sightlines. I mean, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be bothering anybody.
I don't have a problem with that.
I didn't have a problem with it at all, but it's just kind of something that's, one part of our code is kind of fuzzy with the other part of our code, so
So we can make notes.
So it's a little bit impractical, because if you put a 3-car garage, detached garage up, and has 10-foot doors, which is what you need if you're gonna put a horse trailer in, for example, then the peak of that roof is gonna be over 16 feet. 16 feet 8 inches would be a typical peak based on standard trusses that you buy for a 3-car garage.
So if it's something we're wanting to allow, on page 924, that number 4, maximum height where it says principal building 35 feet, accessory building 14 feet, we would just remove that to be in, you know, for ag uses, there's no limit.
Couldn't we just raise the height of our accessory building?
For everybody?
Yeah,
In town too?
sure, like 16 foot. I mean, it really isn't that big of a deal. I think the garage I have is, what, 16 foot? I mean, I can't build another garage like that again because they changed the ordinances. But, I mean, I don't care if the neighbor does, if he builds one. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I think there's a couple other people that have the bigger garages, they fitted in before that got changed. And
So I know one concern with because I have a similar building in my rental property next door to me there, you could literally build an apartment on the upstairs of that garage. And again, just like if that building blew away in the tornado,
You can't-
then I
you
wouldn't be
can't
able to
build,
reconstruct that.
No, but you wouldn't be able to have an apartment there either.
That is the concern,
And-
is when you get those high pitches and that's on
And
that
that's,
second
I'm
story.
glad you brought
can
that
really-
up, because for further discussion, I have just something I want to bring up.
Yeah, and I think that would be the only concern, was when you start going up, then you have more room there to be able to,
Well, 16 foot really isn't enough room to really build anything with. I mean, I know my garage, there's no way.
But you're not in an ag zone.
No, I'm not in an ag zone, but I mean, would somebody need anything higher than that in an ag zone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just, Dave's property is all agricultural. Would he build something bigger than that there?
Oh, that metal shed he has there is way taller than 16 feet.
Right,
You
but it's
Which
been
is
there, but
allowed
that thing's
because
been
it's an
there
egg zone.
for
Yeah.
years, and
I
it's been
think the
allowed.
14 foot is irrelevant, it needs to be scratched.
In an ag zone.
Or
Yeah.
as it relates to ag zone.
Yeah, just change
Yeah,
that
that should-
4G to say, you know, accessory building, and just scratch where it says 14 feet there. I think that would ease the,
I just want to be clear, so we're not debating the 14-foot limit on such a structure in the residential district at this time.
I brought it just as the ag one, because that's the one that's in discrepancies. I guess I am a little opposed to having larger garages in town, because we've had that issue
I
with
can see
State Farm.
the firestorm that would come with that. Okay.
I mean, if you.
And again, we're talking an accessory garage, you know, you build a garage and attach it to your house, it can be as tall as your house, there's not that limit. This is the accessory
Detached.
garage that's not attached.
I'm trying to think about my garage, it's 24 by 30, and I put it, the roof runs across the 24, and I got 8-foot walls.
think
I
yours is
know-
14.
It's at least 14 foot tall to the peak.
Is that attached to your house?
No,
Oh.
No.
that's not ag either.
Yeah, it is.
My property's not ag.
I bet the corner, I bet you're on the corner, I bet it's ag.
Bet you,
Your
I bet
property's
you
ag.
it is.
That whole corner
You
is
guys,
ag.
Polk County, it's not ag.
Well, we have it zoned ag, but since it's not used as ag, they're taxing you as residential.
Oh.
County, will-
Wasn't that one?
it's class, the county will tax it, class it at
Wow,
a
that
class
corner
it as.
platform.
Did the horse barn have to pursue a variance, or did they?
No, because it's on ag,
It's
so
on
their
ag.
permit was
Okay.
approved by our building and.
Polk
building
County
company.
says it's ag.
I don't think
Your
so,
taxes
because
should
they're
be
not
lower.
charging me ag
his
price
house
there.
and
Yeah, your taxes should be
property
lower.
right around his house.
So this is something that we could look at when we go through our
It's that one right there.
thing again.
You sure can, yes, and like I said, I didn't wanna, it just, it come up and I'm like, okay, I
Never
need to
mind.
have them discuss that.
You're
Okay.
residential, you're squared up.
But is it class residential?
But
He's square.
Does
he's
it
squared
say
up.
class?
yeah, class is residential.
See, that's what
on
they
his
tax you
house.
out.
Yeah.
No, that's what they tax him at, but
Oh,
we
is
still
it?
have it zoned, it's still zoned ag.
I got you.
Ah,
He's taxed as revenue.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're not taking any action on this line?
I see hopefully no action on this.
Well,
But I do think it's worthy of exploring, you know,
Yeah.
especially as this
Yeah.
land develops and as things happen. I think we gotta be thinking about the encroachment or the potential concerns of a height of something like this. I don't envision the day of someone throwing a silo up anywhere with no height limits, but, you know, it's, something worthy of discussion.
So what are they out there?
Are you two still debating the,
No, we're talking about something.
Well, it's in Jasper, so I can't see it.
Yeah, it's in Jasper County, and I hate Jasper County's assessment.
No.
It's the hardest to look at
It
things.
is.
Oh, I've gotten used to it, I look them up all over the state of Iowa. Every assessor page is different too.
all right.
So we're just gonna leave the 14-foot?
I think we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna meet with Iowa State.
Well, we're gonna leave the
Yeah.
agriculture with no limit. Is that it? Is that where we're? I don't know.
It says no limit in one area, it says 14 feet in the
Contradictory.
other area.
Yeah, but you're,
Let's shove it to the council, let them deal with it.
no, we have to make a
it
recommendation.
does, I mean, we gotta pick one or the other and.
You don't have to. Let them deal with it.
Well, usually what we pick,
They'll
the
just-
council does the opposite.
They'll just shove it
Yeah.
up to us anyway.
So what we gotta do is think about what the council will and agree with them, and then they'll probably just do the total opposite.
Well,
I mean, that's what's been going on.
okay, so, I mean, we could make a recommendation to amend, to delete the tail language of G, if everyone thinks it's contradicting. It's contradicting to H, correct? I mean, that's the whole theory.
Well, I think if anybody wanna take it to a court, you know, and have a judge decide, I think he's gonna side with the no limit. for the
Yes,
agriculture.
but we hate to have it go to court, you'd
Right.
rather have your zoning
Absolutely,
code,
that's why we
have
should
all the
probably
gray
do something.
areas out of it,
Mhm.
like Carla said.
Right.
So that you're avoiding those issues, and, cause I mean, when he submitted his permit, B&K came back with, no, they can't have that tall of a building, and then, you know, we're looking, it's like, well, yeah, they can, you have to allow them, so.
Well, and I think they were allowed before, weren't they?
Not that building George Redmond just built.
Yeah, George, yeah, he has a,
Very tall building.
yeah, he came and got variance.
Oh,
There's
He
been a
came
couple,
before
there's been a
Board of
couple
Adjustments
others,
to
I
get that
think.
variance, yeah.
See, and that's why maybe we should look at raising the height. I mean, if Board of Adjustments are gonna continue to allow these variances, then,
Well,
if we
it
take
was
the
replacing
14
a
foot
farm
off-
building on a farm, you know, George, that's his farmland, so
Exactly.
that was a unique
I mean,
situation.
could it be done just by case, just like we're kinda doing now? I mean,
No, we're changing the zoning.
Yeah.
We're not going case by case.
well, like,
We're set-
then we need to take out the no limit and put a definite foot there then, I would think.
For ag land, you want a limit of how high it could be?
Well, if you don't put a limit, then they could build whatever, right? And do you want that?
well,
I mean, would you want that?
there is a limit on it now, right? 35 feet or whatever.
No, that's the principal building.
No, that's the principal building, so they can
One
build,
part of the
they
code
can build their
says
accessory
14
building 50 foot.
Oh, gotcha, that's right,
But normally on a house,
that's right.
your garage wouldn't be able to be any taller than your
Nor-
house.
Normally,
So if you have a 35-foot building,
they could put silos out there that are taller than that.
Grading.
yeah,
I vote we get a recommendation from our city engineer on what would be comparable to area minerals.
I agree.
I think so.
We'll do
I
that.
am hesitant to take out something that
right.
might be,
Yes.
I mean, you could say
to
45.
err to the side of caution might be the
Right.
best approach to this at this time, so I would like to, if we're gonna explore this further, let's hear some recommendations from the city engineer or.
Yeah,
as to
you do
what-
that.
Okay.
Let's see the
Motion on that?
discrepancy there.
Or just a request to,
It does.
Yeah, it's just.
This is a request to have the engineer come back and clarify this.
Yes, yeah, I will.
Do you want a motion on that, or?
I don't think we.
No, you won't,
Okay.
you're not, yeah, no, I'm.
Where are we? Item 8, review of the 2022 issued building permits.
That's just, yeah,
Just for information, I take it. If
Yeah.
anyone has any questions, here it is.
and you'll see this horse barn down there at the bottom.
Mhm. Yeah, when I seen that, I was kind of put 2 and 2 together then, when I seen that, I was like, horse barn.
Any relation, Kenny?
No. Don't know him. If I didn't, I wouldn't have made it.
How is Kimberly Development doing? Anything new or anything going on with that?
There's not been a lot of action lately.
They've got all their equipment's out of there, been out of there for a month. Once it starts snowing, they haul it all out, they quit. They have
It'll
to
take
Looks
a
nice.
while to get back in there. It's gonna be pretty wet.
Yeah, well, they won't go into it.
Has there been any,
Now, they do have to still come before you guys, cause it's still zone A.
Now, these permits are for on 7th Street.
Right.
So that'd be up in the,
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's
Deer
the
Run area.
last section of there in Deer Run, yes.
So this-
Yeah, for their new development back there, it's still zoned to ag, and they were, I know they've gone back and forth with our engineers quite a bit on it, and they were gonna come back to us when they were ready to have it rezoned, so they'll have to be doing that here before too much longer.
has there been any demolition permits inquired about across the street from City Hall?
I know they just finally got, permission to go ahead, they had to, the sewer was a problem, they had to figure out how to cap off something before the demo company would come in. I heard that, she had to get 2 bids, and her insurance they got the 2 bids, and they'll be deciding which one, that's all I know though.
So she is rebuilding?
She wants to rebuild, Jeff Hopper's the one who's been coming in and talking for her, so I haven't actually talked to Sharon. She was hoping to have enough insurance money to rebuild it like it was, but she's not allowed to have an apartment on the 1st floor anymore. So, she's not sure what she's doing for sure. She was thinking that she might only get enough insurance money just to build one big one, and then she'd be able to live on the 1st floor. Well, she's not, she's gotta have a 2nd floor apartment, so.
Would that even be allowed there?
What?
Where
The
she's
2nd floor
located?
apartment in the commercial district, yes, you just can't have it on the ground floor. And currently she had it was on the 1st and 2nd floor, it was
Right,
kind of the
right.
side, and she liked that design, so she
Oh,
wanted to do
yeah.
that again, and,
None of that was ever
Yeah.
permitted.
Grandfather.
Yeah, well,
so,
I know the whole story behind that one, that was.
but she has a desire to rebuild, I do know that she wants to.
Anything else that anyone wants to bring before the board?
Well, since we were discussing and Tony kind of brought up, the house just went on the market there on 3rd Street Northwest. It was Donna Hayes' place.
Oh, yes, mhm.
And it's advertised where they have an upstairs apartment
They
and
do,
everything.
yes.
But the assessor has that as a R1,
And I bet that's one that was grandfathered in,
and
I mean,
it
it's
probably
had an
needs to
apartment since I was
be,
a
it probably
kid,
needs to
so.
be changed to an R2 anyhow.
If we wanna actually rezone it, or if
Well,
you've got a special.
I think if you
exemption for it.
don't, we might cause issues in the long run with owners, whoever owns it or whatever, with insurance, and if it gets, because I've had my problem with my house when I first bought it. If it's not zoned correctly, then you have problems with insurance companies.
Yeah, and I'll look and see if they got a special exemption that,
I mean, it
Or
should say
to
right
have
there
them
in the
run
zoning
upstairs.
on the assessor page as R2. I mean, so that's something that really should be changed, especially if it's a multi-tenant place. I mean, I would just hate to see those guys get tied up into something unnecessary like I have before from my
and
experience.
usually the insurance company, or oftentimes it's the mortgage company that would,
Correct.
and they call City Hall, and I usually have to sign something saying, yes, it's been grandfathered in as this property, and they're allowed, and it's,
But as a grandfather. does it
I don't think
transfer
that would matter as long as it
Yeah, you
says
can't
R1
zone
on the
out a
assessor.
business, so if it was set up as a house and apartment, and that's how it was sold, they couldn't say, we couldn't come in and say, well, no, that's not for our current zoning code. We can't zone someone out of, the
No.
money that they have in
This,
their
this is not
property.
grandfathered in really anymore because it has changed hands to a new owner. Anytime anything changes hands to a new owner, some things don't get
Not as long
grandfathered
as
in.
it's still being used as an apartment. If it didn't change its usage,
Well, it was
That's
used
why-
as a business and apartment at one time, so then it got changed to strictly a residential place and not a business, so it did get changed.
but there was always still an apartment upstairs.
Yeah, but the bottom floor was a business,
Mhm.
and that's been changed. So
But,
there's been a change in
daycare's
property.
allowed in a residential area.
Yes. Yes. But I just don't, all I know is that if it says it R1 on the assessor page, it can cause problems. Just from my experience, it was a headache. And if we can do something to change that, I don't have a problem changing it, to R2. That's our multi-tenant, that's not a problem.
In a situation like that, I would almost expect the future owner to be showing up before us to
Or
discuss.
the bank or somebody's gonna.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah, there's one on Fourth Street right behind it, the same way, right next to the alley.
How many of these do
Oh.
we actually have in town like this that are,
Right.
That are like that.
next to my rental property is a house with several apartments in it.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move. You wanna keep that?
We have a second.
Sure, second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
We are adjourned.